Breaking news! This time, we have notes. Hello my lovely friends, it's Margaret. Welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be talking about the books that I read in the month of August. So the month of August was a pretty good, pretty stellar reading month for me as far as books I was reading goes, as far as many books as I was reading goes. I read 14 books in the month of August, and not only did I read 14 books, but 8 of those books were on my August TBR. I am so proud of myself that almost a little more than half of the books I read were actually books that were on my TBR. So altogether those books ended up being 4,319 pages or 309 pages per book, if you spread it out, all of that good stuff. And my average rating was a 4-star, 4.06 stars if you want to be super specific, but a 4-star rating, guys. Come on, it's 4 stars. Yeah, I had a good reading month. That is mostly thanks to a heck ton of rereads. As you know, if you've been following me on Twitter, I am rereading my favorite manga series. I also decided to start rereading a thriller series that the final book came out a couple of years ago, and I just am finally getting around to finishing the series. All of that wish-wash out of the way, let's talk about what I read this month. So the very first book that I ended up finishing in the month of August was Witchshadow by Susan Dennard. This is a YA fantasy, and I ended up giving it 4 stars. It is the 4th book in the Witchland series, which I am absolutely loving as much as Susan Dennard is absolutely torturing me. I'm fine. It's fine. This book ended up finishing Black Panther's mission log for the Avengers Initiative Reading Challenge. It counts for purple on the cover, nature is powerful, and a bilingual main character because, all of them are. I still absolutely love Susan Dennard's world building, her magic system. They just bring me, they're just so interesting. I just like the ways, you learn new little ways, and we're still learning a lot of the lore. Pieces are coming together, don't get me wrong. We're starting to get answers, finally, for some of this stuff. I mean, I guess technically we already know, we just don't know how all of the pieces fit together, but she just has done such a good job, and I think that's because part of this story is really dependent on the lore in the story. I'm not going to tell you too much about what this is about, just know that it is a world where there are different types of witches. They have different powers that they can use. Most of them I think are based on elemental magic, and we start out with Isolde, who is a thread witch, and Safi, who is a truth witch, and thread witches can manipulate emotions. Truth witches can tell whether or not someone is lying, which makes Safi, which makes Safi very valuable as a person, and she happens to be the only one of these that are around, and it kind of just goes from there. The chaos and wonderfulness that happens in the first book, I'm waiting for more of that, Susan. I need more of that. My favorite character doesn't show up until chapter 54 for one chapter, and I haven't had half of my ship together in 3 books. No. I mean, we had a moment, but no significant anything from my ship in 3 books, and anyways, as you could tell by the way that I am going on about this, Dennard knows how to do angst and intrigue, and I'm not just talking about romantic. She's made politics angsty. There's always political intrigue in these, but just the sheer amount of just mess that keeps happening to these characters that are just trying to live their lives, but they're also getting caught up in these greater forces of what is happening in this world, because there are some pieces moving that the humans don't really have control over right now, and it's just so many moving pieces in this series. If you are one that likes fantasy that's got deep, rich worlds, that it has lots of lore and intriguing magic system, and then just things that are happening and lots of layers of plots and things that pieces, and you're figuring it all out, definitely read this book. I will say, the way she structured this, there are some flashbacks, and I kind of wish we just started at the beginning of the flashbacks and then gone straight through without the... I mean, I guess it allowed her to do more in less words, pages, etc. But I do wish we just started from the thing that happens in the flashbacks and gone. The next books that I read were The Vision, volumes 1 and 2, little worse than a man, little better than a beast. So this is a 12-arc miniseries that was written by Tom King and illustrated by, let's see, the artist is Gabriel Hernandez Walter. It follows a lot of events that happened in 2016 that I'm not entirely caught up to in the Marvel Universe. It is about Vision. He has recently, like, something has happened. He's been brought back to life. There's a whole thing with his emotions and having them, like, white vision and all of this stuff. If you've seen WandaVision, like, this is the aftermath of that in the comics, sort of, kind of. At least with, like, where Vision is. Kind of. Long story short, Vision has decided that he is going to settle down and live a suburban life with the wife and kids that he has created. I ended up giving volume 1 4 stars and volume 2 3 stars, mostly because I felt like the ending was a little bit lackluster. Maybe if I'd known a little bit more about going into, like, what was going to happen next going into, it would have worked. But it just left things so up in the air for so many things, and there was so much that happened, and I was just like, you know, it was good writing, but not the most satisfying story. Volume 1 ended up fulfilling several prompts on Doctor Strange's board. It fulfilled 3 or more people on the cover. It fulfilled 5-star prediction because like Tom King is one of my favorite writers currently writing comics. Not that I have a lot, or know a lot, but like one of my favorites because he just did such a good job with Batman and all of that. It ended up being fulfilling the prompt for a strange/weird book and a prompt for, like, book with an interesting magic system, because some of Wanda's magic is used and referenced in this volume. This started really strong. I think, the ending aside, these 12 issues are actually, like, really good as a standalone because the backstory you need is given to you in this volume. Now, I will say, if you're reading comics, like, you're never going to understand the entire story. It's just not possible. These things have been published since the 30s. We've got 90 years of comics to catch up on if you want to catch up on everything. So I would just say pick a title that you find intriguing, find interesting, figure out where volume 1 or issue 1 of that is, and start reading from there. This is a good one if you're looking for something that is going to be, like, if Vision's one of your favorite characters and you just want to read more about him and you don't want to have to worry about how much of the greater Marvel world you need to know about, this is great. I do think, again, the ending could have had more. Like, it looked like it was supposed to tie things up, and I have feelings of where things are going to be going, but I just didn't really, like, it wasn't the greatest ending. I've read better. Next book we need to talk about is The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. This is the Avengers Reading Challenge group book for the month of August, and it ended up completing the rest of my Doctor Strange board because there are some things in here that fulfill some prompts. Yay! It fulfilled, like, breakup, medical professional, book with a library. I think there was one more because there's like 8 prompts in the center prompt. So I don't remember what big character arc. It fulfilled big character arc, and I ended up giving it 4 stars. This is about Nora. From the get-go, like, we can't talk about this book without saying that there is a big trigger warning, like, from page 1 for suicidal ideation. There is a countdown involved. As we're kind of flashing back to the events that lead her up to this point. So, like, this isn't a spoiler, just know going in that a lot of this, like, the beginning revolves around this character trying to kill herself. So she ends up going to this library where people kind of like this liminal space between life and death, and it's the Library of Regrets or something. I don't know. It's just the Midnight Library, but it is full of people's, or at least it's full of her regrets, because each person has their own library, and it gives her the chance to kind of live out some of the things that would have been different if she'd made different choices. So she's able to go to specific places in her life where she was able to make a choice and see what would happen differently. This was really, really good, and, like, there's obviously only one way that this story can end, for it to be a hopeful and not sad story. And I think it was really well done. I know Matt Haig does a lot about mental health because he did struggle with suicidal ideation, I believe, at one point. Like, his depression, I think it's depression that he had. It was, like, from what I understand, it was really bad. And so now he kind of uses his books to write through that, write that out and kind of give hope to other people, at least from what I understand from other books that people have read of his. I liked the way that we got to see the same character live different lives. I've read a book where it's like different variations of the same character in different realities. This one, we get to follow the same character all through the entire book and watch her be affected by the different choices that she is making, and I really like that. I liked being able to, like, I like those kinds of storylines when we're seeing one person kind of be confronted that, like, what is it, a wonderful life kind of thing that happens, like, multiple times over and over again. So I highly recommend it. Like I said, do know that trigger warning, so, like, be careful going into it, but just, it was so good. The next book we need to talk about is Captain America. Work with me here, Cap. Captain America, The Winter Soldier Ultimate Collection by Ed Brubaker and a couple of artists because, yeah, let's see. So we have Steve Epting and John Paul Leon and Tom Palmer and Mike Perkins as the artists on various issues. This is one where there's a couple of team-ups for some of the issues that are going on in here. This is basically the Winter Soldier movie, except Sharon is Nat. Basically, like, if you've seen that, it's about Steve kind of being confronted with the fact that there is this person who is committing acts of terror. It starts to come out that it might have been his old pal, Bucky, his protege from World War II. And it's not quite as much of a, like, it's a big deal, but, like, it doesn't quite have the weight that Steve and movie Steve and Bucky does, because, like, in the movie they were best friends. In this, Bucky is someone who gets assigned to him from, like, as his sidekick. And so they're close, like, there's a relationship there, but it's much more of, like, a mentor with their protege type relationship, and I greatly prefer the best friends one. I ended up giving this 4 stars, and it also completed a prompt on Ant-Man, which was to read a book with the letters A, N, and T on the cover. This is also a book chosen by a friend because I had to be punished because I didn't read all of the books I was supposed to read. I didn't complete the TBR for Fullmetal Alchemist. So, did I complete it for I hope I completed it for August. I'm not sure. I haven't really sat down and looked at that. I think this is a really solid story, and I think it does a better job than Vision did of, like, I mean, it's still very much a, you're gonna have to read the next volume to find out what happens next for certain characters, but it still provided a satisfying conclusion within the story that we are given. I think it definitely could use a better female rep. Sharon is not the strongest character, like, she's still kick-ass and badass, but a lot of her storyline just revolves around men, like Steve and some other stuff that happens, and it's just one of those things where I'm like, I could have used a little bit less damsel in distressy and a little bit more badassery. Also, it was kind of funny to read this because, like, this is like Infinity War level Steve Rogers. He's like, I give it 0 forks. I don't care. I'm gonna do what I want to do and, like, gonna do the right thing whether I have the go ahead or not, and I just kind of love him for that. He also has 0 care for his own safety to a like just a concerning level. Also, one thing I do want to mention, it's kind of interesting because definitely he's killed some people. Like, there's no way that he can be slinging that shield around with the amount of force that he is slinging that shield around with and not have, like, murdered a whole bunch of people just even in the first, like, issue of this. Like, I'm just like, yeah, if you're hit there with that shield, with, like, because that's at that edge with that force, you are no longer on this earth. You have been unalived. So it's kind of interesting to see how Marvel takes a little bit different approach to people, like superheroes killing people, than DC does. It was interesting. The next book we need to talk about is The Butterfly Garden by Dot Hutchison. I gave this 5 stars because I love it. It is amazing. It's a series. This is the thriller series. This is the book that got me into thrillers. I'm gonna be honest, it's the one that made me go, oh, like, I want to read more of this. And then, yeah, so it's about an FBI team, and they are part of a unit that focuses specifically on crimes against children, and the books follow them as they are trying to solve or in some way interact with different serial murders. So they come at different places in these investigations. In this one, it is very much after everything has happened. It follows a different FBI agent and a different, like, victim every time, and I love it. I feel like it has such a good emotional impact. Like, it's not one of those things, like, it has payoff at the end that I was never, like, the first time I read it, I was not expecting that kind of emotional payoff from this kind of book. And now that's what I look for in all of my thrillers. Like, I need that emotional payoff for it to be a good thriller. This ended up fulfilling a prompt on Hawkeye's board, which is the prompt to read a underhyped book. I love it. I love the story structure. I will say I don't recommend reading it as an audiobook because even though they use 2 different narrators, one for Vic, one for Inara, it's still really jarring because there really aren't like chapter breaks in the typical sense. Like, it just, she starts and it goes back and forth. I found that easier to deal with. Like, it never bothered me reading it physically. It did bother me listening to the audiobook, even though the actors are both very talented. This is a good book. Please, more people need to read this and then continue on with the series. After that, I ended up reading Hawkeye Volume 1, My Life as a Weapon Artist, and let's see, by Matte Fraction. Artists are David Aja and Javier Pulido. This is about Hawkeye. It's about Clint Barton, and it also involves Kate Bishop, because Clint's life is apparently a disaster and a mess, and I have no idea where we were going into this. I don't know where it's going at all, because again, it's been a while since I've read any Marvel. Like, a while since I've read any Marvel, and I thought it did a really good job of, like, having everything you needed in the story to understand the story in the issues that we got. This is definitely not movie Clint, like, in any way, shape, or form. I ended up giving this 4 stars. It also fulfilled a prompt on Hawkeye's board, because it's a book with an arrow on the cover, so that's what I used it for. We did some changing around of things. I really liked the character that we have for Clint. It's much more what I remember from when I would watch some of the shows and from what I've read with the Avengers. He's very much like the little guy, just kind of having to deal with this world that has big bad guys that are causing trouble all over the place. It really brings that kind of energy, little guy in a big pond kind of energy to the story, while still making him relatable and not like someone you sit there and you go, oh my god, stop whining. I loved the fact that we had the inclusion of Kate, and you can really tell and hear how far Marvel has come with a lot of their female characters, because Kate Bishop is a badass, and she doesn't need to be saved. Like, she in fact may do some saving in this, and I really appreciated that. This is also much more like vignettes of Clint having to deal with things. It follows a couple of different storylines. I think like one half of the volume is one storyline, one half is another storyline, and you can tell that there's a little bit of an arc going between them that is not quite yet apparent, but they also are really good at, like, they're real quick, short, snappy, and you move on to the next story. Lots of backstory in this though, like lots and lots and lots and lots of backstory. I'm interested to see what this leads into in the greater Marvel universe. After that, I ended up reading El Deafo by CC Bell. This is a middle grade graphic novel. I ended up giving it 4 stars. Also, it fulfilled the read a book with a character that is deaf or hard of hearing on Hawkeye's mission log. This is basically an autobiography about CC Bell, who at 4 got meningitis and ended up losing her hearing, and she grew up in the 70s. So the way that they dealt with that and got her into school, because she was in a school with other deaf children for a while, and then when she moved into middle school, I guess it is, or later on to elementary school, I'm not entirely sure, but at one point she ends up switching schools between one grade and the next, and the way that they decide is the best way for her to be able to learn is she's going to carry this like telephonic ear, which it has little buds that plug into her ears, and she has a microphone, that's the word, there's a microphone that her teacher carries around so that like her teacher will speak and she can hear what's happening. The art style in this was really cute. I found it very interesting to be learning about her experience growing up as a deaf child and how that affected not just her schooling, but like the friendships and her self-confidence. This is very much a journey about her self-confidence. There are a lot of discussions in here that I think it's good to be introducing kids to. I think it's really a really helpful tool about teaching kids about what it's like to be deaf or hard of hearing, and kind of give them an idea of what it's like to live someone else's life. I think she does a really good job of bringing you into what it was like for her as a kid. So the next thing that I am going to talk about is my manga series, and I read these volumes at different times during the month, but I'm just going to talk about them all in one go because like what I have to say about it is the same. I read volumes 2, 3, 4, and 5 of the Fullmetal Alchemist manga by Hiromu Arakawa. I Still love the series. I gave every single one of these 5 stars. A couple of them fulfilled prompts for Avengers. Volume 2, I think, fulfilled magical attire for Ant-Man, and then I am sure I can get these to count for something. They're heavy, so I'm just gonna hold up Volume 5 as I talk about this. This is a series about 2 brothers, Ed and Alphonse. They are alchemists, they are teenagers, and when they were younger than they are now, they tried to bring their mother back from the dead using alchemy, and it didn't go well. Ed is now, like, he's lost an arm and a leg, and then Al is a soul in a suit of armor, is basically how that works, and they are currently working for the military. Ed got into the military as a state alchemist so that they would have access to various things. They are going around trying to figure out how to restore their original bodies, and that's the course of, like, the start of their journey. And then in the start of this, they end up getting drawn into some stuff that is going around in the country. These things still hold up so incredibly well to current events. They still have commentary that I think you can find on current events, especially when you're starting to look at some of the wars that this country, my country specifically, has gotten itself in, and the way, like, the things it has to say about how refugees are treated and how resistance, we'll say, is made. I love the female representation in this series. It is written by a woman. So, like, the fact that she just takes so much time for each female character, like, she puts so much effort into making each one of them, like, really badass, but also really different. Like, it's not just some, like, your typical, like, Chad with boobs on that you see in an action movie. Like, this is actually, like, they're nuanced. They have levels. They all have different goals. They all have different personalities, and I love it. Different skill sets. Like, just, it's fantastic, guys. I love this series so much. If you are a fan of manga and you're looking for something to maybe get more into shonen, this is such a good series. It's my favorite series, and I don't think that's changing ever. The next book that I read is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. This is about Addie LaRue, to everyone's surprise. In the 1400s in France, she gets in a bit of a spot. She gets engaged to someone she doesn't want to marry, and she's like, I don't want to be this guy's second wife. I don't want to have to take care of all of his kids. I don't want to be saddled with this family that I had no choice in creating. And she ends up praying to some people that she should not have prayed to, and that leads to her making a deal with basically the devil to be able to live her life on her terms. But that deal, like, she actually basically asks for time, like immortal life, basically, to be alive for as long as she wants to be, and then she will give him her soul when she's done using it. Part of this bargain that she doesn't know about at the beginning is that means no one is going to remember her, like, ever. She has, like, no one who she knows now remembers her, no one she ever is going to meet in the future remembers her. And then, in the present day, she meets Henry, and Henry remembers her. I used this to fulfill a prompt on Ant-Man's board, and that is to read a book about someone who is lost. I liked it. I gave it 3 stars. It was okay. It was not the kind of ending I would have liked, and I don't particularly like, it was such a good story, and the way she goes back and forth and uses, like, the past to comment on Addie's present and all of that, that was so well done. Like, this is some of V.E. Schwab's best writing. She never disappoints me, ever, in my, like, ever. I say that, and then the Monsters of Verity exists. I take it back. She almost never disappoints me. Anyways, this was not my book. This was not the kind of, like, ending that I like, especially in plots like this, and I could have gotten what I wanted. She could have given us that. She could have, and she chooses not to. So, anyways, yeah, it's good. Read it. Next thing I read was Uzumaki by Junji Ito. I gave this 2 stars. It is about a town that is haunted by a spiral, and that's about all I can tell you about the plot without, like, giving away a lot. It follows, what's her name? Gushima. And her boyfriend starts to notice that his father is increasingly obsessed with spirals, and it kind of goes from there, and, like, all kinds of weird stuff starts happening in this town, and I didn't like it. And it's not because it's a horror manga, it's because nothing made sense. Like, at the beginning, we have this spiral thing, and that, like, there were connections. I was like, okay, these are all connected to each other. And then about the middle, it's like the Ito ran out of spiral things, I guess, that he thought he could do, and so we get some, like, other weird stuff, and I'm like, what is going on? Like, how does this link to spirals? And then we got to the ending, and I just absolutely hated the ending. The ending just left me going like, what was the point of reading this whole thick thing? You gave me no real answers. You gave me no satisfactory ending. Like, it just, things happened. I'm like, if I wanted to read books where stuff ended up like it would in real life, I would just live real life, because I'm already there. I also very much prefer, like, the smoother, more put together manga styles, like, for example, Fullmetal Alchemist, or in High School Host Club. This is very much more a sketchy kind of, not abstract, like, it's really detailed and it's really well done, just not my favorite. And the final book that we read in the month of August was Nemesis Games by James S.A. Corey. How does this weigh less than some of the other books up here that are shorter? This is the 5th book in the Expanse series, my new favorite series. If you didn't already know, I absolutely adore it. It just is such a good space adventure. It has a little bit of a romance. There's not a lot I can tell you about the plot because, like, suffice to say, the first book, what I tell people is it's part detective story, part space cowboy adventure, or space espionage adventure. We got some people that are running from their ship getting blown up by another planet's, like we've got Earth and Mars, and their Earth, well, no, they're not actually, they're working for the belt, but basically their ship gets blown up by what they think is Mars, and they start running, and then we have the detective who's looking for a missing woman, and their paths end up crossing because of a whole bunch of stuff that is going on and still affecting things 5 books later. And I think it's so interesting how these authors have managed to like still have every conflict link back in some way to what happens in the original book, but have it be different every time. Have it be a different link. Have it be a different reason that things are doing what they're doing. Like, it's not where you're repeating the same book over and over again. I mean, you kind of are, because the universe is chaos. Jim gets thrown into the middle of the chaos. He's like, well, I guess I'll just do it, like, I have to do something because I don't want to die, and he ends up handling his small part of the chaos. I love this series, and we finally got a Naomi point of view story, and now I want all of them to have Naomi's point of view. It made sense why we got Naomi, Amos, and Alex, as well as Jim in this one, because they're all in different places. It very much it followed really well the fifth season of the show. I do like the show, the way it handles some of Naomi's plot lines a little bit better, because she has more agency in the show. She is the one choosing to do the things that she's doing, rather than reacting a lot of the time to what's going on around her. Like this one especially, like, she is reacting to something, where in the show she is making a conscious choice. Like, this is something that she has on her agenda and she's going to do. This ended up fulfilling the parent-child relationship mission on Ant-Man's mission log. I just loved it. Like, I love being able to be in all of the crew's heads. I love this crew and their devotion, their familyness, their just how much they love each other really shown in this book. Because, like, if you're looking for a found family narrative, this one is so good for that, because the crew of the Rossi is just such, like this just drives away home the fact that they consider, like, they're more than a crew. They are family. They have each other's backs, and they miss each other, and it was so wonderful and heartwarming and wholesome, and whew, I'm not ready for the next book. It's kind of scary because I know some of the stuff that happens. Okay, so now that we have told you all of the books that I like, or nope, that I read this month, let's talk about favorite versus least favorite. I think these are really easy to guess this time around. Uzumaki gets the distinction of being my least favorite book this month. Would not read it again. Would not recommend. Like this isn't even one where I can be like, I recommend this to certain people may enjoy this, but like, I just would not waste my time with it. And then my favorite book obviously is going to be Nemesis Games by James S.A. Corey, because it is the only 5-star in this list that is not a reread. So none of the others, like, nah, none of the others even rank where this one goes for me. So, like, I just, This series has yet to disappoint me and I'm so scared. So those are all of the books that I read in the month of August. Please let me know down in the comments if you're feeling chatty. Let me know your favorite and least favorite books for the month of August. If you know them, like, yeah. If you're not feeling chatty, go ahead and leave me a little, like, sun emoji because August is the last of the summer. At least if you live places that are not Florida. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. Also, if you enjoyed this video, check out some of the videos over here. I'll have like maybe reviews. I've done reviews of a couple of these, like the series that they're in. So I'll put those over there. Maybe something else, something new. That is it for now, my friends. Happy reading, and I will see you later when we will talk about more wordy, nerdy things. Bye! If anyone is wondering, yes, this is the video that I had to re-record because there was lipstick all over my teeth from like book number 1. It's fine. I'm fine.